Everyone knows the story of Romeo and Juliet, but now it's time for a reimagining of the world's most famous love story. But this time, it's a musical. With me now is the writer, director, and producer of the new film, Juliet and Romeo, Timothy Scott Bogart. Timothy, how are you this morning?
I'm great. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, I am very happy to have you with me. Now, to start off, what inspired you to take this classic piece of literature and turn it into a musical?
It actually goes back to when I was directing it on the stage, and I was directing actually Shakespeare's text. And the more I looked into it, and the more I actually directed the show, it has always been about adaptation. I think going back to the origins of when Mr. Shakespeare wrote in 1595, you literally can find this most beloved tale, perhaps of all of literature, maybe with the exception of the Bible, performed virtually every day in every city in every country around the world, and it's always different.
Hmm.
And I think that's what Shakespeare ultimately, the greatest gift that he gave to all of us was to take these remarkable themes, but constantly look at them differently. I mean, from Baz Luhrmann going, okay, now it's set in Venice, California, and horses are cars, to someone saying now it's set in World War II. The Broadway show and Juliet. It's not
Hmm.
unique to look at different angles in, and I think that's actually the requirement to some degree for me when I was directing, feeling like, gosh, I didn't explore all that I think could be there, led me on this journey. And ultimately I was having a conversation with my brother, Evan Bogart, who wrote the songs, he also wrote Halo for Beyonce and SOS for Rihanna, a big pop star songwriter. And I asked him, why do you think Shakespeare used iambic pentameter? And he said, well, that was the poetry of his time. I said, oh, that's interesting. What's the poetry of our time? And instantly he said, pop music. He said, but think of every single generation going back decades, the youth, it's not that they listen to these songs, it is who they are,
Hmm.
it is what they feel. And that idea of inner music as inner voice seemed to be the direct trajectory back to Shakespeare's inner monologue. And that's really what was the origin of it, but it's always been about adaptation.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many adaptations of Romeo and Juliet out there. Personally, I can't think, and I couldn't find anything about a musical movie about the adaptation. So it's definitely a very unique one.
Well, although I would say, certainly Mr. Lerman used quite a bit of music in it, although it wasn't a musical. Now, a different adaptation, but perhaps one of the best known and most loved adaptations would be West Side Story, right?
Mm,
Which
it's
obviously
true.
was a different story, but a complete musical. So there was always a way to look for different ways to take those remarkable themes and apply them to this particular moment.
Yeah.
And music seemed to be the thing.
Well, I will say I loved the music. Like you said,
Oh, thank you.
pop music is like the one that sticks with you. You're not gonna forget a pop
Just
song.
it does, yeah, it
Yeah.
just holds you, and there's a reason for that. You're in a
Hmm.
car and you want to scream, or you're feeling sad and you want to cry.
Right.
It is music we go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, so you mentioned earlier you did work with your brother. He created the music for this
The
movie.
music.
What was it like getting to work with him and bringing those songs to the film?
Well, it's always a pleasure working with family. In this case, obviously, my younger brother, another younger brother, Brad Bogart, was one of our producers. My daughter, Quinn Bogart, was actually the second year director and
Oh
did a
wow.
remarkable job. So it's a bit of a family affair on that front. But the music approach was very different than anything I had ever done, that
Hmm.
Evan had ever done, because it was so inextricably intertwined, not just to the creation of the story, but to the physical production. You would be sitting there at 3 o'clock in the morning on the top of a mountain in Italy in the snow, and I'd suddenly realize, oh, we're doing live capture with all the vocals, and I'd suddenly realize, oh my gosh, the horse is taking 4 seconds longer to get from here to there. You now need to go to the mobile recording studio hanging off a mountain and add 4 seconds to the architecture of the song.
Oh.
So the ability to do this live with him was really quite thrilling and quite scary.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, with shooting a musical, that's totally different from shooting just a straightforward
This
film. Were there any
is
challenges that arose for you guys? Have you shot a musical before?
I have always used music in virtually everything I've ever
Hmm.
done, because I, as just a human, don't see one part of the world without the other.
Hmm.
I did a jukebox musical, but a true musical. This was certainly the first. Although, I've always thought there's kind of two musicals, and I've loved musicals. One is the one where the milkman is walking down the street and singing, and he like knows he's in a musical,
Hmm.
so much so that his cow seems to know that it's in a musical. And that's not where we were going. We really were looking for this inner truth and kind of an authentic voice from these people. So that was perhaps the hardest part, is finding a musical language that felt authentic to these characters, but allowed us to get into their heart and soul without it suddenly becoming the milkman and the cow, which I think, it's a very easy thing for people to assume it is. It's actually quite a bit, I hope, deeper, and more authentic than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you have an amazing cast. You have Rebel Wilson, Jason Isaac,
Thank you.
Dan Fogler, and so many more. But taking on
Yeah.
our leads of Juliet and Romeo, we have Clara Rugard and
Yep.
Jamie Ward. So
Ward.
what was the casting process like for this? Because you did a worldwide casting call.
I did. I did. And it was really two different kind of casting approaches. One, you're right, was for the kind of grown-up cast. And for that, I really was looking for people who had a toe at least, if not a full foot, or like Mr. Derek Jacobi or Sir Derek Jacobi, an entire, lifetime in this world. I wanted that authenticity and that weight. And so you go to someone like the brilliant Rebel Wilson, who most people don't know was a serious actress when she began on the stage in Australia. So it was actually very, very direct for her, but very surprising perhaps for her audience.
Mhm.
Jason Isaacs, of course, has done such remarkable work. But that was sort of one approach. But to your point of the younger folks, I really wanted, because we were going into this very authentic world, I wanted us to feel a purchase with these characters as if we were discovering them as well. So it was a worldwide search, but in the world of Zoom and craziness, when you're casting arguably the two most important love story characters in all of history, unless you see them in person in front of you and go, oh my gosh, I can fall in love with falling in love with them, you don't have anything. So I ended up doing a full screen test in Italy, where we flew a whole bunch of people out to Italy for a weekend of training and rehearsing and singing and dancing and performing, and finally got to see Jamie and Clara together. And my gosh, they knocked me out.
That's awesome. You have a great cast. Even all the younger ones besides Jamie and Clara.
They're wonderful.
They are all super talented. Can't wait to see where they go with their careers, because they're pretty new, it seemed like, based on their filmography from what I saw.
They are. Most of the, I mean, look, we have, Nick Padati has been in a number of big TV shows, but he was in the movie the Saturday Night movie. Freddie Walsh-Pilo, of course, was in Coda. Taylor Parks is, of course, an amazing songwriter and performer. And Jimmy and Clara have had their roles and have done some beautiful stuff, but this really, hopefully, will be different for them and open up some more eyes.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned his name, Derek I'm going to probably mispronounce it. Jacobi. Thank you.
Jacobi.
And he plays our Friar Lawrence. And he's one of our, like, the greatest Shakespearean actors alive today. What was it like working with him for a Shakespearean movie?
Like the blessing of all time. When I was thinking about who could play the great Friar Lawrence, I would say things to my casting directors, to my producing partners, if we had someone like a Derek Jacobi. And then I was talking to his agent, and he said, what about Derek? I said, well, would he know he has to rap? Would he know he has to dance and have pillows thrown at him? And the amazing thing is that's what attracted him, because his body of Shakespeare work is really his entire career. Mm-hmm. His own words back to me is, every single thing I do is finding a new way into Shakespeare. I don't want to do the same thing. I'm always looking for an adaptation. When he saw our work, he thought that was amazing. Now cut to me sitting again on a mountaintop, and suddenly I'm directing, one of the greatest Shakespearean actors of all time, who I grew up watching, Henry V. Branagh's incredible piece with him. It was stunning and surprising every day. He was one of the sweetest human beings on the planet Earth. But what an incredible gift to work with him.
Oh, I'm sure. I loved him as Friar Lawrence. I thought he was just so fun in that role. So I think he was a great casting. Now, costumes and sets play such a major role in any film, and you guys did not shy away from it at all. You even had 3-time Oscar-nominated Dante Ferretti as your production designer. So what went into bringing Verona and its citizens to life?
Well, first of all, just a slight correction. 3-time winner.
Oh, sorry.
9-time nominee.
I mistyped there.
So I grew up my entire life, aspiring to make movies that could possibly touch just the bottom rung of what Mr. Dante Ferretti was able to do. And similar to Derek, I remember I was desperately trying to search for a production designer. Costumes with the incredible Luciano Capozzi had been on for months. We were, getting materials from all over the planet, and 1,000 people cutting these things. But I couldn't find a production designer, and I kept saying things like, gosh, we're in Italy. There must be someone like a Dante Ferretti. And his agent said to me, what about Dante? And I said, okay, our entire budget is probably the catering budget of his last gigantic $600 million movie. He said, I gave him the script. Would you be willing to go to his island and meet with him? And I took a secret flight to the island to meet with Mr. Dante Ferretti, where he made me pasta. We talked about film. He's literally been the designer of virtually everything I've ever aspired to get close to. And he became truly one of the greatest collaborators I've ever worked with in my life. And authenticity at every step with him and Luciano and my incredible DP, Byron Werner, was central to everything. I couldn't have done it without any of them, obviously, but boy, their contributions are just stunning.
Oh, absolutely. The sets, the costumes, it's so beautiful throughout the whole film. It really just makes you feel like you're in Fair Verona.
That was the goal. That was the goal.
So, what do you think, with this adaptation? What do you think audiences will be most surprised by?
You know what I really think and hope audiences will be surprised by is how much fun it is. And that's a funny thing to say when you say, the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, which we've adapted. But my angle in really was to understand this group of young people, their worlds, what it was like on a Friday night to hang out with them. The fact that perhaps at the beginning, the Montagues and Capulets are actually kind of more friends. They've got a rivalry, but it's not where it ultimately becomes. So even though one goes in going, there's tragedy, and there is, I think they will be rather shocked to see the way we've approached it, which again, I would argue and challenge that if Shakespeare was here today, he might approach it the very same way. I think this play, of all of his works, is probably his poppiest play, because it's one of the few things that Shakespeare wrote that was really, geared towards a younger audience. But when you think about the language, when you think about the approach, even when you think about something like age, which people have brought up, Juliet, they should be 13 or 14. Oh, well, granted, but in 1301, lifespan was 30. Right. So you would have been promised to marriage halfway through your life, which today would be like as a 40-year-old, not a 13-year-old.
Right.
And even in 1595, when Shakespeare wrote it, lifespan was 40, and certainly rights for women, and none of that was what it is today. And what the beauty of Shakespeare is taking what was so brilliant that he did thematically and apply it to today. So I do think it would be quite different, and I think audiences will be surprised, hopefully not by the changes, because it's not for change's sake. It's really, I remember my daughter who's been watching my 10-year journey to make this. I would give her the draft every time. And she would sit there and go, I wouldn't say that. My friends wouldn't say that. We wouldn't believe that. But that's who the movie's for. And if you want those themes to resonate to them, you have to understand the contextuality of it, I think.
Yeah.
So that's at least the hope. And I really hope they walk around going, that was fun. And it was fun to be at the movies again.
Oh, it was such a fun movie. The songs, you just feel so enveloped into the story and everything like that. Now, something I didn't realize is 10 years to bring this to fruition. How does it feel now that you're finally to that point where it's about to go to the big screen?
Exhausted. It's funny. I just saw some of the cast, a couple of weeks ago, and they were going, "Oh my gosh, we haven't seen each other in like a year and a half," and they're like, "I haven't been able to stop looking at your faces every day on my editing screen." So for me, it has been nonstop, even through the time from production, post, and even our crazy strike we had, where everyone had to stop for a year. It's thrilling to be done, but most importantly, it's thrilling to be able to share it with people. Because I really do think we're at a time and a place in this world where we could all use a little escape, we could use a little fun, and that's what we hope we've delivered.
Well, I definitely think that's what you delivered. I love the film. So much fun to watch it. Juliet and Romeo hits theaters this weekend, and you don't want to miss it. Timothy, thank you so much for talking with me today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.